Hey, my name is Cecilia, or you can call me Cece. So I actually worked at the office, most people know, for 2 years before I stepped out. I was cutting everyone's checks, so I'm really good at command and know what it takes to actually get a transaction and the paperwork that needs or is required to close on a deal. What's cool right now in the transition I'm making is I'm now trying to create a TC business. So I'm learning all the ins and outs, but the fastest way to do a transaction, but how to communicate the best with agents. I think the best thing about myself is I like to learn and I like to build relationships. So I always say transactions should be fun, and it's nice to have a transaction coordinator because you're going to deal with clients you want to talk crap about. So most of my conversations, not clients, but I should say the opposite clients that that you're working with. The deals are hard. A lot of negotiations, a lot of moral support. So even though I do a lot of the paperwork, I also am there to guide and help you with relationship building, just because I tend to be really good at that. So yeah.
Yeah, so we have a transaction coordinator in all of the offices. So Cecilia is the one that represents South Valley. So you will see her. I mean, do you do the other offices at all or just? Oh, okay. So you can use whoever you want, but we do kind of have assigned transaction coordinators to each office. But again, she's the one here out of South Valley and picking up others in other offices, it sounds like. So I want you guys to ask me any questions. And then I also have a checklist that I can email to you when we're done, especially those of you on Zoom that maybe won't be able to see my writing. But we're going to start with buyers first. So basically, I'm just going to kind of split this down the middle, and we'll just say, I don't know what that is. I might erase it in a minute. What we do with buyers, and then we're going to go over in what we do with sellers. And a lot of it is the same. So I want you to chime in with anything that I miss or anything that any other way that you would like to see things done. So we're basically assuming at this point that you do have a contract, that you're actually under contract on a home. And now everything's been signed, accepted, delivered, and you're like, now what do I do, right? So step number one with a buyer is you want to make sure that all parties get a copy. So when I say all parties, and this is actually going to be the same with sellers, who are the parties involved in a transaction? Let's test this really quickly. Who's involved? Carly. Buyer's agent, seller's agent, title, lenders. So on the buyer's side, the lender is involved. On the seller's side, it's going to be the same parties, but we do not send it to the lender. So we'll kind of go back and forth. Buyer's agent, title, lenders, and seller's agent. Who else? Can you think of anyone else? And your TC, if you have one. So the TC. And again, keep in mind everything I'm teaching you today at the very end, if you just give everything to her, maybe that's what I'll do is I'm just going to promote the TCs during this whole training. So when it comes to all parties, you can cross all of this out and just do the TC. She will make sure all the parties get a copy of everything. So that's how she's going to help you. So we want to make sure that everybody has a copy, and the other person involved is your brokerage. The office also has to have it. So I would say command. So I am not very good at running a transaction through command because I've always had a TC doing it for me. So it is important that you guys go through this process and understand how it works. But just so you know, if you never did it yourself and always gave it to a TC, that's okay too. You just want to know what you're responsible for. So office, TC, seller's agent, buyer's agent, title, and lenders. So then the next step is your earnest money. Must be deposited. So where, when, and where do we deposit earnest money? Anyone? Within a week. Brokerage or title company. So what's the specific answer? Within a week. It is within a week, but Carly, what's the days? 4 days. Yes. It can go to the brokerage or title. Yep. So it is within 4 days, which you're still correct. That's within a week. 4 days, and it needs to go to the title company or the office. And then you also want to make sure that you receive a copy of the receipt of the earnest money. So is that something you can help them? Do you provide that when it's deposited?
So usually the TC will reach out and just ask, hey, what is your client, or which way does your client want the earnest money deposited? And if it's at the brokerage, if you like the communication, some agents want to communicate only with their clients and the TC just communicates to the agent through them to the client. Or you can ask me and I can text them and say, hey, here are the instructions, what you need to do if you drop it off at the brokerage. If it is through the Earnest app, we take care of that and we'll go through command and send them all the instructions, fill it out for them. So all they need to do is put their banking information in and I just let them know it's an $18 charge. And sometimes they like that better just because they don't have to come to the office.
Can you explain what Earnest is a little bit more in detail? Do you guys know what Earnest is? Some yeses, some nos.
So
Okay.
Earnest is just a wiring app. So a lot of people like, hey, do you take wires? Our brokerage doesn't, but we have that wiring app called Earnest. If it isn't out of state and some banks don't work with the Earnest app, we will allow them to do an Earnest through Keller Williams, but it's more of a rarity. So we usually push through a cashier's check or just the Earnest app, which is that wiring.
Yes, and that costs them $18, but sometimes they prefer to do it because it's just easier. As far as earnest money being dropped off, so I prefer never to touch other people's money, just so you guys know. So I will have my client drop it off. They can also mail it in. They can do the Earnest app or they can do a wire. So just kind of a heads up, I don't like to carry their money around in my bag or anything like that. So I never take a check from people, but you can. And then you could drop it off. They can drop it off. Just know your offices are open from 8:30 to 5:30. So again, that's another reason why they like the Earnest app, because it's something that they can do outside of those hours. Keeping in mind too, if you do deposit it with the title company, there is going to be an addendum that is required disclosing that it's being dropped off at the title company. So is that also something that you would be helping them with if they do that, or do you prefer them to do the addendum first?
Yeah, for the most part, again, it just depends on the agent and how much work they like to do. Most busy agents will be like, hey, I need to write this addendum up. But sometimes the agents already have it, written up.
Okay, so you can do that during negotiations. So I don't know if we mentioned this, but Cecilia is licensed and all of our transaction coordinators are licensed, so they can write addendums for you. So that's going to be a huge help throughout the process, is that they can do that. Not all transaction coordinators have a license. Just know that. Okay, anything else on earnest money that I missed? Okay, so then the next thing you want to do, and remember, all of these have deadlines. So the next thing you're going to want to do is order the inspection. And usually you have 7 to 10 days to complete the inspection. But keep in mind, as I went over when we wrote up the offers, if you say that you order the inspection on day 9, when we get to the appraisal and the loan approval, they have between 15 and 21 days to get their loan done. If you wait till day 9, you've just used 9 days of the same time the lender needs. So I would recommend that you're ordering this inspection within 24 to 48 hours of going under contract. Do you order home inspections for them?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, everything we're writing down today, your TC will do for you. It's basically like an assistant. So order the home inspection with the buyer, just so you're aware. The home inspection, you can be there, you can be present. You usually are the one, or your TC is the one who's going to order it and facilitate it and arrange it with the listing agent. A lot of home inspectors will call the listing agent themselves to do that, but you want to kind of pick the day that's going to be best for the buyer, and the best day that if you want to be there, that you can make it on your schedule too. And it usually, I would say, is going to take you probably a couple days to negotiate your repairs and whatnot. So there could be an addendum needed during this as well. How do you help with any of that? Negotiating repairs, or do you do some of that?
So most of the time, agents will ask for advice on inspection reports like, hey, can you look over, see something that I haven't seen? These are the repairs that our clients want. I also am always paying attention if it's an FHA loan, because if that's the case, anything that along the stairway, the railing, and then also painting of the chip or even the outlets, those are things that some appraisers can come through and mark, and so they won't appraise the home until those things are fixed. So those are stuff we definitely always want to check for those loans, but for the most part, it depends on the clients. If they really want the home, they're going to ask for less. But as an agent, you should always say, hey, let's just try for more. They'll tell me, like they'll text me and say, hey, I need an addendum written up with these are the points that need to be made. And then I'll just word it correctly and just write it up in an addendum.
Awesome. So she can help you with that too. So because I'm flip-flopping back and forth, I want to back up a little bit. So on the seller's side, again, all parties need a copy of this other than the lender. This is not your responsibility on the seller side, but you do want to make sure you get a copy of the earnest money receipt. The one and only time I've ever had to go to court in 20 years, knock on something, was because we did not receive the earnest money on the listing side of things, and we had no receipt to prove that we received it, and the buyer actually did not turn in the earnest money. And the deal got almost to closing. It was $10,000, and the person did not have $10,000. So you're really protecting your seller if you make sure it's been deposited. So make sure you get a copy of that. So working on the listing side, do you reach out to the other party to get a copy of that?
That's always a task list. We always want to make sure we reach out within those 4 days. Like I just had an agent that I followed up with, and as long as they're in communication, like, hey, we still haven't been able to deposit it yet. We're going on 5 days, 6 days. Is there any way we can write an addendum up to extend that date? Then that's totally fine too, and just get an addendum written up.
Yeah. So very important that you, as the buyer, get the copy of it and you give it to the listing agent, or you make sure your TC is doing that for you. And then on the seller side, so on the buyer side, you're the one that's going to help facilitate getting the inspection ordered. On the seller side, you're basically just preparing your seller to receive a phone call, and you want to let them know that they will be expected to leave the house for a few hours. The buyer is paying a third party to come in and do this home inspection. So you really want to prep your sellers. No home inspector wants the seller sitting there while they're doing the home inspection. Most inspectors, most of them you want to ask, but most of them have super keys so they can get in through the key box. If not, you would want to arrange access to the house with the listing agent. So that's kind of all you're doing here on the seller side, is waiting for inspection. Yeah.
And then I'll just add, so along the way, if you don't have a TC, so if you're writing addendums up or even the earnest money receipt, those are all going to the parties too. So you got to always be updating your emails through sending it to the title company, the lenders, the buyer side or seller side, whichever one you're on. And because they'll ask you eventually, but just to stay consistent, because there's a lot of addendums that happen, just send those every time you receive them.
Thank you. Very, very important. I'm putting an asterisk over here. Any written or signed documents, all parties need a copy of it. We do have title representation here this evening. A lot of the documents, like your agency agreements, your listing agreement, you guys don't necessarily need that or want it, right? But it's okay. 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 So just to clarify, at the listing time, the title company would prefer you to send over the exclusive right to sell. That just shows that you are representing the seller. So that's a really good one. So I'm going to put the ERS, which is exclusive right to sell, so that they can order the PR. So yes, a few of these documents are going to come into play before you have a contract. When you list a property, they need to pull a title report right away. So yes, thank you. Otherwise, a lot of the lenders and things like that, they don't necessarily need agency documents. That typically is happening before you put the property under contract. But yes, any written or signed documents need to go to all parties. And I just would say, when in doubt, send it to the lender and the title. I'm sure you guys see a lot of random things that you're like, we don't need it, but you don't care that you get it, right? Yes, better to provide too much than not enough. So just make sure that you're doing that to all parties. Okay. So then the next thing you're going to be doing on the buyer side is, so typically you're waiting for the inspection. You are communicating with the lender. So we don't ever want the buyer to have to pay for, $500 or $600 for a home inspection and then say the lender's already ordered the appraisal, but we can't get the repairs negotiated. So they're going to want to back out. Now they've just paid $500 or $600 for a home inspection, and now they're going to pay $500 or $600 for an appraisal too. So I communicate the inspection with the lender and just say, hey, we're under contract. We have the home inspection scheduled for Tuesday. I'll let you know by Wednesday if we're ready to move on. So make sure you're communicating this with the lender as well. But again, keep in mind, move fast, move very fast. If there's going to be any issues and you want to back out, you want to do it sooner than later. So then once you get past the inspection, then you let the lender know, hey, we're great to move forward, so they can go ahead and order the appraisal. The lender is going to order the appraisal, so you don't need to worry about any of that. You just need to communicate with the lender to make sure they know you're ready. Anything you do with appraisal?
Some agents will ask, for newer agents here, their opposite party is always going to want to know where it appraises at. And so if you're in negotiation time, don't feel the need that you have to tell them what that sales price came in as. Just say it appraised. You also don't need to tell them what the actual price came in as unless it is lower than the actual price. So if it's higher, you don't need to say. Like if it came in as more, which is good, you don't need to say anything.
Yes, very good. So the buyer is paying for the appraisal. The buyer is paying for the inspection. So technically they own those things. So even during the inspection, if they're like, will you send me a copy of the inspection report? You can, and it really doesn't hurt to do that. But just keep in mind, you need permission from the buyer because they've paid for it and it's third party. It's not ours. It's not the other side. It's theirs. So make sure you ask permission. And same with the appraisal. So in fact, I wouldn't tell them where it comes in at. Most of the time it's going to come in right at the purchase price, but sometimes it does come in higher and you'll want to re-strategize how you do the loan based on if there's any extra value in there that could be used like towards closing costs or something. So on the seller side, I put wait for appraisal. So same as the inspection, the lender is most likely going to reach out to the listing party and just find out when they can get into the house, or the appraiser will do that themselves. So they're just basically waiting to find out when it's going to happen. So then we have the inspection, we have the appraisal. So a lot of this is your 30 days. It basically can take 30 days or close to it, depending on your deadlines. So a lot of this, you're just waiting. So if the appraisal comes back and it comes back, say low, now you're back to renegotiating purchase price or closing costs. So you will be kind of in charge of beginning this negotiation when it comes to the appraisal. The seller side, you're basically just waiting to see what it is the buyers want to do. As a buyer, if this comes in low, I may go back to the listing agent and ask what comps they used and see if we can get some better comps. But it's just a lot of communication, but the buyer is really kind of in control. Any questions on appraisal or what you'd be doing? This is usually about 15 to 21 days. And this is for the appraisal to be ordered, complete, back to the lender, and the loan be approved, all in this time frame. So you can kind of see why I'm like, hurry, 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 get through all of this, right? So then once the appraisal comes in, so on the buyer side, you're basically waiting for loan approval at this point, if you have to negotiate anything. There will be, if you do have to renegotiate appraisal, there will be another addendum that gets used, whether you're changing the purchase price, changing closing costs. So you could be in charge of addendums here. And again, Cecilia or any other transaction coordinator can help you write those up too. So then you're waiting for loan approval. Once we get loan approval, then basically you are going to be the one to schedule the closing. You're going to want to communicate with the listing agent, let them know, when it's happening. And then we typically want them both to close right around the same time. So depending on the loan type, we want the buyer to close first. Do you guys both agree with that? Lender, title, or do you have any other thoughts on that? Okay, so we usually want the buyer to close first because depending on their document package, there could be something that the seller has to sign. So you'll get loan approval. Once you get that, then you are going to schedule closing. And scheduling the closing, you are going to take into account your client's schedule, your own schedule, and you also want to communicate with the lender. Most lenders want to attend closing as well. So make sure that you can just make sure that all parties can be there at the same time. You don't have to schedule the seller side. You just let them know when you're scheduling, and they usually know when they should be scheduling it. You're gonna say something?
Yeah, I'll just add something right before schedule closing, like Terry was saying. You want to always schedule that final walkthrough.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's
Missed the
something
final walkthrough.
you don't have to, but we always recommend. I've already seen a couple agents. Some houses are more cluttered than you think. And when everything clears out, it's not as clean or chipped paint or something. And so if the sellers were to close, which has happened before the buyers, which is why the buyer should close first, you don't get to say anything after they sign those papers. So
Yeah, and you can use this as leverage. So the final walkthrough, thank you so much. This is also the power of having a TC. You have another set of eyes on your file. So if I miss something, she's probably going to see it. So very beneficial. So final walkthrough, you usually do that within 7 days of closing. Sorry, I'm trying to write this, but you guys are not gonna be able to read it. But within 7 days of closing, I typically will go like the day of closing or the day before. So even a week is too long, especially if they haven't packed up their belongings. But this is where you're checking. So if you did negotiate any repairs, we do want to make sure the repairs are complete before you close. Otherwise, this can be your leverage to say, we're not closing until you guys have completed the repairs. And if you didn't do the walkthrough and you go through closing and the repairs are not done, they're less likely to get them done for you. And it will be a fight.
and just two small details if you don't have a TC. Two things that you always want to be in contact with the sellers for is if there's HOA, you want to get those docs ASAP and just see what those fees are. Just because sometimes you're hit with a higher fee than your client expected. And then I've also seen for home warranties, that's a huge one because there's been times that either the buyer's agent thought the seller's agent was going to call their title company, and your title company has no idea that you wanted a home warranty. That's been missed, and that's a huge one for their clients, and then they don't get it paid if the sellers were supposed to. So just staying up with those two, I'd say.
I told you I use a TC, so I don't remember all these details, which is not good. So yes, so you want to make sure that you have the home warranty ordered, and usually we can send the invoice, we order it and send the invoice over to title, and they'll make sure that the seller pays for it or whoever you've negotiated into the contract. So you're responsible to order it most of the time and send the invoice over to title. And Cece brought it up. So seller condition property disclosures. This is something we usually get from the seller side. So the listing agent is responsible to have them filled out by the seller, as well as any HOA documents. What else? The title report. So this is back on the seller side.
I would say utilities.
Any utilities? Do a lot of people ask for those? Every time. Wow. Okay. So people want copies of utilities. So again, on the listing side, your responsibility is to obtain these and make sure that the buyer gets them before their home inspection. So that's something to remember on the seller side. And the property disclosures include all of these. And there's a section in the REPC that you can look at if you ever get confused what exactly are the HOA documents, because it entails a lot, like budgets, minutes from any meetings that they've had. It entails a lot. So again, this is something your transaction coordinator will do for you and obtain for you. And then what else? Let's see, closing, home warranty. Really on this side, on both sides, it doesn't matter what side you're on, you're really doing a ton of communication. So at the end, you also want to negotiate possession, because even though you have it in writing, like it's 24 hours after settlement or 3 days after settlement, like that is such a moving target. So you want to really be communicating, if you're representing the buyer, you really want to be communicating with the seller. When is the seller going to be out? Are we waiting for them to, do they have movers coming? Do your buyers have movers coming? When are they coming? So this can get a little bit tricky. So make sure that you do this well before closing, maybe like a week before. So you're going to be arranging this. And then you also need to arrange for keys. And this, I would say, is the exact same over here. So it's just communication. So how are you changing keys? Are there mailbox keys? Are there clubhouse keys? Workout room keys? There could be a lot of stuff involved in getting keys. So you want to make sure that you do that too. What else?
I would say, so once that deal is closed, the one thing I'm always checking is, was the earnest money that your client was holding included in the check that is deposited to you as a commission, or are we still holding it at the brokerage? So if we're still holding out the brokerage, I've seen so many earnest monies sit there and the client doesn't remember, the agent doesn't remember. So it's just like a free 5,000 sitting in our escrow account. So until someone reaches out and say, hey, can we cut this check to the buyer and then send the paperwork of the closing and the check that's been deposited into your bank account, then the brokerage can release that money to your client. But for the most part, I usually see that it's always used in the check. So it is a rarity, but it does happen sometimes.
Yeah. And that's just good communication with the brokerage, the TC, anybody who's helping you. And that's the one thing too. So I'll have you go over the command side of things, because I definitely don't mess a lot with command in my world. So as she's putting all of this in here, she's going to help you create a commission tab that is going to show you exactly what you're getting paid. And it's a little bit tricky. So even if you don't use a TC, we do have classes where the CFO will come teach you how to do that. But that is something that Cecilia will do for you, or any other transaction coordinator. But talk a little bit about command and how that plays into all of this stuff.
So in command, there is something called the details tab, the documents tab, and the commission tab. There's probably 3 other tabs you don't ever touch in there. But in the details tab, you just got to fill out the property box. So you're pretty much just stating, hey, this is the file, this is the property. So when the person that's cutting the check goes in there, they can look up the property on the check that they receive from title, and they're able to find your check a lot faster and get you paid right away. So it's important to fill out that box just for reference points. And then if you want to keep track in command, when you have a bunch of opportunities you're working on, you can change the status in command. So you can say ones that are active or under contract, ones that you're cultivating on. I find that easier when you're going in there and you have 20 transactions to find the ones that you're actually working on. So to label that, you find that in the details tab. And then you also have the documents tab. And so the documents, don't feel like you need to submit that every time. There's 2 sections where you already have documents that can be auto-filled, so you don't have to create which ones you think are going to be in there. They will populate for you. Oh, thanks, Terry.
Yeah, I'm going to pull up command so you can see exactly, because maybe some of you haven't ever seen this in command. So basically what we're creating here is an opportunity. That's what it's called. So in command, you can just click over here and you can click on opportunities. An opportunity is basically your file and your opportunity to make money. So when it pulls up here, you'll have listing opportunities and buyer opportunities. I'm going to pull up one that's over here under contract. So there's a lot to this that Cecilia or a transaction coordinator will do for you, which is probably adding the contact into command and then creating the opportunity. So that is how you are turning everything into the office, basically.
And if you want, I still have a video that I created when I worked here in my emails. So if you guys want to write your emails down, I can email that to you today and you can watch that video, and it's going to describe everything that we're talking about.
We can send it to everyone. Yeah. Alex, would you mind making a note? So yeah, we will send that out to everyone, just kind of a video on the command side of things, but this is what she's referring to. So here's the details tab. So you can kind of see the phase that it is, what type of opportunity it is, who it is, the address property. This is how the earnest is handled. So when she goes in to request earnest money this way, you're doing it straight from command, correct? Key dates are going to be in here. And then the financial information is in here. Your seller profile is going to be in here. And then here's all of the documents. So she's uploading and adding all of these documents in here to create the file for you. Otherwise, this is where you're going to be uploading everything. And then also submit it to the MC. But all the documents that we just kind of went over, so you can see this one has HOA documents in here, MLS input. You want to go through that?
So this is something I kind of figured out halfway and it like saved me. Because you're sending, because you're collaborating the buyer due diligence, wire fraud, affiliate business disclosures, all those in one doc, you're going to have it in one formatted PDF. And so what's easy is when you're actually uploading it in here, let's say, yeah, this section has the wire fraud seller disclosures. It's just the listing side. To distribute that into the correct sections, if you click on these three dots and do split and attach PDF, you can actually distribute those documents right here and you don't have to use another platform to do that. And so it saves you time. And also, I mean, I was printing it off and trying to distribute it. I did so much work before this. So yeah, it's like, because the one thing is this doc guy wants it to be easy and peasy because he has to look through so many files. So if he doesn't see like the first wire fraud or buyer due diligence at the front, even though he can scroll down and it'll be in that PDF file, he's going to flag it and be like, yeah, it's not there. Then you have to like talk to him about it. So you will always see something that's red instead of approved right here. If ever there's something that's missing, or sometimes people miss signatures or boxes to click. So what's nice is you see this comment box here. Whoever was in this file fixed whatever he flagged it for. So additional initials included. He will always tell you the note that needs to be fixed, which is really nice too.
And you get those notifications through command. So usually through an email or right here through the little bell. You'll get a notification. And this, when we hit submit to the market center, that's turning in whatever documents you have, and you can turn them in one document at a time. You don't have to wait, because it's going to start with an agency document, then it's going to start with the contract, then you might put in the inspection. You don't have to wait till you have the whole file. Just start submitting things as you turn them in. And then we do have a compliance department that will go through all of this and let you know if you've missed anything or done anything incorrectly. And then this next one, this offers and commission tab. So this is one that also is really helpful when you're using a transaction coordinator, because they are going to come through and figure out all of this. So let's see. Oh, this looks like it was a canceled file, I'm guessing. So you can see everything that happened in here. So you can see who we had in here, who was terminated. Where do you see the commission? Am I not in the right tab? Oh, view commission. Sorry, your faces were on top of that. Okay, so this is where you're going to see the commission tab. So when we talk about the commission tab, do you want to explain this?
Yeah, so the commission tab, it's already created, but you'll go through different steps and it'll ask you what the sales price is. It's going to already ask you from the start what the commission rate is. It's going to do that math for you. If ever you see one of these missing, you can always click on edit general information and add that in there, because you will not be able to submit if anything's missing.
You can show them how to do that.
Yeah, we can. No, that will be fast. Let's see.
Because this is a tricky piece of the transaction.
So when you go to,
So if you're not using a TC, you need to know how to do this.
So when you go to opportunities, you'll just do create opportunity. And I'm either going to be on the listing or buyer side.
This is happening right about here when you're under contract.
So I'll just click on listing, just create my name. So whatever client you're working with's name. And what's cool about this is you used to actually have to add a contact information or the contact information in a separate tab. And now they've added it in one lump sum. So when you click on add new contact, because I'm not in here, you can add the email address and the phone number as you go. So it's pretty simple. I won't do that now. I'll just do this so it's quicker, but add that information in so it saves to your files and contact information. And then I'll just create the close date being a month from now or a little bit over a month. And then this is when you put the commission rate in from the start. and then you'll just create, and then it brings you to that page. So it's really simple. It takes like 2 seconds to fill out. You'll create that property box here. So whatever property you're working on, you'll fill that information out. This is the status, the status I was talking about earlier, where you can switch from cultivate and watch. I always like to put if I am under contract in here. And so when I save, when it goes to all the opportunities that were in that other page, it'll now show under contract so I can find it easier. Documents, one thing people are like, I don't know how to upload any documents. Well, the first thing you always have to click is just this black arrow, which is going to give you that residential or commercial choice. And most of the time you always do residential, and then they populate for you. And then under contract too. Another trick that people are always like, I can't upload anything. If you ever have your command file connected to your DocuSign, you're going to have 2 options here that says my computer manual, or it's going to say my DocuSign. If it's on your DocuSign, you can't drag and pull like you have the options right here to do. So that's something I'll always tell people, like just click back to here if you want to play with it, or if you want to just use it through your DocuSign. And then the offers and commission tab is really just a few steps. So I always keep it as initial offer, create offer. And I'll just put those estimated offer dates. So let's say we went under contract today, and then we went under, or we're closing August 31st. And then the parties is I'm representing the seller, so I'm the agent, and Terry's the agent, and I'm the client. And then the buyer that will be in the REPC. Let's just do client's name there. And then let's just say Lori Bingham is on Terry's team. So I'll just say that's who she's going against. And then that's all you need. I always tell people, don't waste your time. Like, don't put anything else besides the asterisks. You guys are busy agents. Just put what you need, because it's mainly for you. And most of the time you're not really paying attention to the commission tab. The main things you want is to make sure that sales price is in here correctly. So let's just say the house is $4,050. And then let's say we put $5,000 in earnest money. I'll fill out those 2, and that's it. This is just pros and cons and notes. I never fill that out. And then I will just accept this offer. People think once they accept it, it's submitted. It's not. You got to click on manage commission. So it's in 2 steps. Contract date is always the one that I notice doesn't fill out. So I always have to click on, it lets me edit general information. Yeah. I'll just put today's date again. It's loading. Okay, everything's pretty simple from here. If you do have outside referrals, deductions, or bonuses, we can help you with that when the time comes. But for the most part, you're just looking at that agent gross commission. And then most of the people like to look at what's the royalty they're paying out, the company dollar. So royalty is 6%, and your company commission as an individual agent is 70-30 splits. If you're on a team, that is like an 85-15. So you notice here, people like to say, okay, I'm getting $810 out of my commission amount, and then company commission, they've obviously capped. So there's $0 in that section. And then $25 of E&O is taken out on every deal. And then when you come up here, you can see what your total is going to be after the $13,500 and deductions were made. And then you can go ahead and submit if you're good to go. And you'll notice okay, this is good. So whenever it says missing listing information, which is why the details tab is important, all it wants you to do is put in an address here. They're like, oh my gosh, I filled it out. And really it's just saying we need to locate what property you're talking about. And so when I save that and I go back into here and submit, you always want to see these donations pop up. And so if you'd like to donate, go ahead and click the blue button. If not, you just skip donation and submit. And then what you always want to see is submitted. And so that last one you looked at, you saw terminations. You can terminate this file at any time and redo that process if anything changes along the way.
So if the purchase price change, are we terminating this and recreating the commission tab, or are you just editing the numbers?
So depends on the person that's cutting the checks. So for the most part, I always made it easier for agents because at the end of the day, we want this file just to state that new purchase price. I always say add a new custom folder here so you don't have to go through that process again, and just say new purchase price is. And so if I created that as whatever new purchase price it would be, it would still pop up as the note here instead of.
So check with your MCA
Yeah, instead of
is
here.
basically who will need to check that with.
But the big things that I always tell people to terminate a commission tab for is if you have any bonuses that you're expecting, because if we can't see it here and a title company doesn't put it on the settlement statement papers, you're not getting the bonus. And then also you want outside referrals to go to the correct place outside states. And so that address, name, all the money that you're expecting to give to them is super important too. So yeah, talk to your MCA.
Any questions so far up to this point? Any documents or when you'd communicate with people? Carly? Yes. Like the file names? It's a good question.
So I use a TC system, which is nice. So it creates the actual property address. You can create like what am I thinking of? An Excel spreadsheet. But for the most part, I have like TC docs titles the buyer's name, titles the property's name. And so when I click on there, it has a bunch of steps. One thing I wanted to share that Cami showed me with you guys, which is actually really cool, is there's something called text plays. And this is great for anybody. I've been trying to tell everybody about this because when you pay like $2 a month after like 60 free templates. But when you click on text plays, the cool thing about text plays is it's connected to your Gmail account. And so let's say if you were in your Gmail account, actually. So really what text plays is you can create, thank you. You can create any template you want. So let's say you're doing a checklist, right? You can create that whole that checklist in text plays with the emails that are connected to that checklist. So I use two systems. So any extra templates that I want to make that isn't really in flow with my system, but I notice that they'll pop up in some of my deals, I will create them in text plays because it saves you so much time. Everyone has heard of Chat GPT, right? So it's almost like you're creating your own Chat GPT. And so I'm going to just open it. Here, actually, I can probably just do it from here. Maybe not. Okay, I don't know where it's actually. Yeah, it has to download. Anyways, you see right here. So watch how it works. So they do /intro. And so you see a message that pops up. So /pass help. And then they have a message pops up. I've connected. Say it again. Hockey's never heard of that. So let's just do like, yeah, go ahead. Right. Yeah. So I would use that for if you have templates in there, because you can do like buyer's side, and then you can just create a list of checklist under that that have the checklist of the names of things you want to do from A to Z, but then also templates you can put in that. So every time you go in your Gmail and you have text blaze that's open with it, you could see what step you're on and what emails you need to send out, because it's like $2 to have every month. And then most TC systems are like $50 if you want to stay organized in those ways. I do recommend it if you don't have a TC, just because you're running around as an agent, but you also are trying to keep track of the backside. And TCs use systems for the backside because there is so many steps. Yeah.
How many steps would you say? Do you know exactly how many steps there are to a transaction?
I have about like probably like 25 to 30 steps, but it's also the steps have notes of follow-ups in there. So maybe even like 40 now. You'll notice how you like to do things as you go. And then even if you want to add steps of like note cards and thank yous and all those things, you can keep track of that as well.
That's a good segue into what I was going to ask the next question, but I also want to just say this is a giant commercial for using a transaction coordinator. So the reason I'm saying that is I can't tell you how many times, and Carly, you've just had a few deals, so you kind of get this. Anybody else had their first deal in here yet? Understand the process. So what I see happen is people will get their first deal, and it happens to all of us. It could be your 10th deal. It could be your 20th deal. You will get a deal and you will literally babysit the deal for 30 to 45 days and you will do nothing else. And then in 30 to 45 days, you're like, I have no other business to do. So if we really can put this on our transaction coordinator's plate, this is what they do all day, every day. And I can't tell you how many of them are like, I can't leave my computer because this is what I'm doing all day long. We need to leave our computer, right? Like we need to be out and about. Our job really, we're responsible for all the paperwork, but our job really is to be with the people and help them find properties and price properties and all those things that are really, really important for our job. So it's really nice to have a transaction coordinator who can handle everything else. So you don't lose those 30 or 45 days. So I know she just said there's 40 steps, but those are very time consuming steps. So I will shamelessly plug a TC all day long. Comment. Okay. Hold on. Your microphone.
So I've worked with agents who haven't used a TC versus agents who do. And the transaction, as far as smoothness on my side, on the lender, way more smooth with the TC than without, especially if you've got kids and you're working another job. Like it's difficult for us to chase down addendums. And if you're a solo agent just doing it all on your own, it can get difficult to chase those addendums down. So I'm a huge advocate for TC for sure.
Yes, and we got an amen from Title as well. So huge benefit at a very low cost. I'll let her explain what she charges and things like that in a second, but I wanted to go into customer service side of things. So on the checklist that I'm going to make sure you guys all have a copy of, it's in the PC library of contract to close. There are customer service steps in there too that are not required, but definitely going to help your experience. We want to create a wonderful experience so that they come back as referrals. But one of them is just a welcome email, like, congratulations, you're under contract. Here's a list of the parties involved. Here's a list of the dates involved. So those are the things that you want to template. Those are probably the things that Cece's talking about that you have templated. But what else do you guys do for customer experience or customer service throughout the transaction?
For the most part, it's keeping them updated on everything you're doing. So most of the time, agents are like, well, I have it handled. I'm getting utilities in for you. I'm getting inspections. I'm getting the appraisal done. But if you just send them like, hey, just want to let you know what I did today. Got the appraisal order. This is the status, or this isn't the status with inspection report. We're supposed to have it within 1 to 2 days. I find that they like to be a part of the deal, even though honestly, some people are like me, where I'm like, hey, if I trust you, do it all. I don't want to, to be involved in this. But I find most clients are just scared because it's buying a house. It's a big deal. So they kind of freak out about it. And if you just have the templates set up and have them CC'd on all emails that you feel like would be important for them to know, and then follow up with text, they really like that.
Yeah. So add customer service in through all of these steps anywhere you can. There is a campaign that Josh Stern has shared with us called the Good News Campaign. And so I really twisted all of my stuff to say that. So like throughout the transaction, they get an email that says, good news, the appraisal's in. Good news. Because this is so stressful. It's so up and down. And they're just like she said, they don't know what's happening. So the number one complaint from consumers about realtors is that we stick a sign in the yard and they never hear from us again on the seller side. On the buyer side is they don't know what the next step is. So we need to be over communicating. So any form of communication you can put in here, which typically is just an email or a text, but become very systemized and automated. And if you're not, and you don't want to build that system, it's just another reason to have a transaction coordinator in there. Other things that you guys do for transaction coordinating, maybe more on the listing side that we haven't talked about.
Yeah, the listing side, one thing I was going to mention is I'm always checking the date of when the house was built. So we always want to make sure that lead-based paint disclosure is filled out and signed because that document tends to be mixed. And the buyer's agent will be asking for it. The command people will be asking for it. Title will be asking for it. So we just always want to make sure that looks good. And you can upload those docs on the MLS, so you can have those already pre-done. And so the lead-based paint disclosure and the SPCD will be uploaded in there. So if buyer agents are going in there, they can upload it themselves. And then I always follow up with sending it to them too.
Okay, awesome. And then other things on the listing side that I was wondering if you guys do is, what about like inputting the listing? Do you do that?
So most TCs don't, but I do. So a lot of agents really don't like doing that. You also have to write a paragraph. ChatGPT is great for that.
Yes.
But like if you need to go in detail about your property, most people aren't writers and they need that box to sound nice because that's the first impression that somebody's looking at in description of the property besides the photos itself. So I enjoy writing. I'll tell people I'll do it. It is more time consuming, so I just up my fee. But I do write that for them. It saves them so much time. That's the hugest thing,
Which
is
includes uploading photos.
Scheduling photos for them if they want, and picking the date for open house when you want to do that, filling out the MLS input. I recommend trying to find that MLS number of the house that you're selling already on the MLS and getting that input and uploading it. Otherwise, you got to go through the whole MLS input and fill all that information, which I had to do one time and I'll never do it again. So it's a lot of steps with like the square footage and how many bedrooms and bathrooms and what is all the problems and what are the benefits. And so it does take quite a long time. But that will most of the time be on there, and then you'll just put, when you're posting it, and yeah, that's the side we'll do.
Okay. What about like ordering signs? Is that something you do, or
I have not
ordering key boxes? Okay.
Yep.
Sometimes, and most of our TCs are very open to, they don't want to be your personal assistant. They're not going to go install the sign for you, but a lot of them are willing to do a few extra things here and there. Some of them will provide like marketing and stuff for you at an additional charge. So just know that there's a lot of stuff. We just went under contract to close, but there's a lot of stuff that happens, especially on a listing before you get to that point, that I am super grateful for that they do, because listing input, the MLS input, I mean, that could be an hour. I mean, it is a lot of data entry. Scheduling the photos, scheduling the sign to be installed. It doesn't sound like it's all that time consuming, but anybody who's had a listing will know that it really is. And again, this is where you end up babysitting all of this. It's super important. Obviously, this is our goal, is to get it to a closing, but you just lose so much time. So tell us what you charge, and not all TCs are the same, but they're all going to be within the ballpark.
So the TC fee right now is usually like $350 to $400. I'm noticing it now be $400 to $450 just because of the market shifting and the price of the homes are rising. Yeah. It's more so $400 to $450 now, just because the homes, since COVID happened, just skyrocketed up. So TC fees are just getting a little bit more. I also find like my price is usually 400 now, just because I was doing like posting listings for free. I was doing all this extra work for free, but that was me just building clientele. I was like, hey, let me do all this for you. Let me be your TC. But it is really time consuming. And so just think about it this way. You're closing on a $10,500 home, and the TC, you'll notice, is going to do most of the work once it goes under contract. You have to find the client, but the TC really closes that deal for you. And so you're really just paying like 400 feet. Does not sound bad. Something I always recommend to agents, there's something called the brokerage or transaction fee. And so if you don't even want to pay your TC, you can actually ask the client and let them know straight ahead and say, hey, the BAC is 3%. And we also have a transaction coordinator that will be working alongside of me, and that will be an extra $400. And so 10,500 plus 400, your clients really are okay with that for the most part. And so you get a transaction coordinator for free when you present that right away to them.
Yeah, has anybody noticed the box on the agency documents that has a $ plus a percentage? That's where a lot of people are putting in there that they charge their client 3% plus $400. You know, they're used to paying a lot of fees when they're purchasing a home. So it's not unusual that they would have another $400 fee. And I would just say it's an admin fee. And then you're paying the admin. I personally, just so you know how I run my business, I personally don't charge my client that fee. That's just something that I've always felt a little weird about. A lot of agents do it. So I'm just going to go back to what she just said. Let's just say we're paying her $500 because they're amazing. $500, and your average commission is $10,500. So for you to spend 45 days doing this job when you could be going out and finding more people and doing the $10,000 job. So just kind of keep that in mind. I can tell you a very true story. So I did real estate on my own without a transaction coordinator for a few years, decided to hire the transaction coordinator. She did lots of deals for me, but then I just felt like, gosh, maybe I'm paying too much money. This is crazy. I can do this. It's $500 a deal. I can do it. To save myself, I don't know, $10,000 at the end of the year for her to help me with transactions. My business plummeted the year that I decided to take my transactions back. So I can tell you that there's so much value in being able just to hand it over. And that's why, like, even me doing this, I do deals a lot. I do deals all the time. I don't have to worry about any of this by having a transaction coordinator. None of it. I literally go to the appointment. I get the document signed. I go under contract and I hand it to the transaction coordinator. That is the last time I see it or touch it. Because they're that good at getting you all the way through this, all the way through closing. And it's a 30 to 45 day process. So like I said, normally I teach the class and then do the commercial. I'm still doing commercial hard here, but I highly recommend it. So did you do yours on your own or with TC? Yeah. And the nice thing is too, is this money that you're paying her, it comes right out of your commission. So you're not paying this up front. So that's what's nice too, is you have another set of eyes on your transaction. She's in it to win it too, because she doesn't get paid if this thing dies here. She's not going to be really happy that it canceled, just like you're not going to be happy. So you have one extra person, one extra ideas, maybe they've come up with something. Why don't we try this? It's just the power of more people, more brains, more eyes. To keep this thing together, because if it dies, she doesn't get paid either. So, yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome to have them. But this is the transaction in itself. So do you guys have any other questions regarding the transaction? The last thing I put here is update addresses. I find, and I do this, I'm very guilty of this. This is not anything the transaction coordinators do, although we should see if we could figure out how to have you guys do that.
Yeah.
It's just a checklist item, but typically you're going to help your seller move and you forget to update their address in your database, or you're going to help the buyer buy a new house and you don't update the address. So just if you've had closings or think about that, go through maybe your last year's worth of closing. If if you've done several closings, and make sure you update the addresses in your database, because then you're going to be sending marketing that you pay for to a property that nobody else lives there, or that the people don't know you. So this is the last final step that I know that they don't do. that you really want to be doing. At closing gifts are really big. People love closing gifts. So you can get as creative as you want with the closing gift. I do a lot of kneaders baskets. They do a lot of really pretty baskets, $50, huge basket. But I would definitely recommend closing gifts. I do closing gifts for buyers. I don't bring a gift for sellers. In my mind, they are packing up and they don't need more stuff to their house. So I usually do like a gift card here. So I usually do like a dinner and a movie or something that I know that they like. But I always try to present something to the buyers. Any questions? Are you all ready to go through a transaction, get it closed? Or 10 of them all at once? That's the other thing too, is I know if you're a newer agent, it feels like I can't even imagine doing 5 deals at the exact same time. It's going to happen. You will have 5 deals in your pipeline. You'll have 20 deals in your pipeline. People at the top of our roster that are doing 60 deals a month, they cannot do that by themselves. So back to the TC commercial, definitely get used to using a TC. And like she said, they can communicate with your client. So I think it looks very professional for you guys to have somebody else involved. So just during the initial consultations, I just make sure that they know. I have a team of people. Cecilia will be, you'll hear from myself, Cecilia, just so that they kind of have the expectation of who is this person. But it's just one more person on the team. Yeah.
I'm going to put my phone number here. So I work with Terry and Nick. And what I find is I just make really deep connections with agents I'm working with because they're running 3 offices trying to coach. And so I'm almost like the third person helping them understand what the process looks like. And so if you do have, I'm working with agents right now that don't even have contracts under contract yet, but they're still asking me questions on like, what do I do in this situation? What do I do in that situation? And as long as, we're working together, I'm going to help you try to get that contract under contract even. So if you ever even want to text me, if you can't get a hold of Nick or Terry, because I know they have their lives too, I am on my phone all the time. So I get to people within the hour. And so I will let you know. And I have a lot of connections with top agents and the brokerages. So I'm always asking questions from them so I can figure out what answer you need to. Hopefully you can read that. 463746. That was the play. Any other questions?
So that's all that I have. Thank you so much. Let me know if you guys have any questions. We do have a couple chats. Sorry, Zoomers, you have to speak up. Let's see. Oh, she's sharing Cecilia's number. Thank you. And Jacob saying thank you. Okay, no questions from Zoom. Hey, you guys have a great night and a great weekend if I don't see you.